channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video. Welcome to a very fun and exciting video. I'm really happy to be talking about what I'm going to be talking about today, and that is my top 15 books of 2020. I couldn't pick 10 because I just couldn't. There was no way for me in my heart to drop things down to 10 when I have so many books I just absolutely loved this year. I mean, I did read 180 some odd books this year, and so picking only 15 that I've absolutely loved was hard enough. So, you know, bear with me here. I just couldn't do it. So we are going to be talking about my top 15 books of the year. I did put them in order, which was very hard because, again, my babies, but I think that I'm happy with the order that I put them in. I can't change my mind now, it's already set. But before we actually get into it, and before anybody asks, no, I did not go to Cal State Fullerton. No, I did not graduate in 2020. We were celebrating my sister-in-law's graduation this year. She graduated, and I didn't feel like taking this shirt off, so this is what I'm wearing. But no, I did not graduate from Cal State Fullerton, okay? That was so random, but I just figured I would address it just in case anybody was wondering. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the top 15 books that I read in 2020. So like I said, I did rate these in regards to my least favorite to my most favorite in regards to my books, and this doesn't mean that any of them are less. It does kind of mean that when I rank them this way, but these are just like more about feelings and less about the books because I love them all, and I wish I could love them all equally, but apparently I can't. So anyways, the one that I have in the slot number 15 is going to be The Chaos of Standing Still by Jessica Brody. I don't own my copy anymore. I sent this over to a subscriber of mine. I mentioned this several times in videos, but I did send that over, and I don't have a physical copy anymore, but I will get one eventually. I just really, really loved this book. This book follows a girl who is traveling home on New Year's Eve to get back home to her family. It has been a year since her best friend died. Almost a year. She died on New Year's Day the prior year, and she has one unread text message from her best friend that she has left on her phone for that entire year because she's afraid of letting go. She's afraid of reading that text message and letting go, and then she gets stuck in the airport in the middle of a huge storm, and she ends up actually accidentally swapping phones with this boy that she runs into in the middle of the airport. And it's just a flurry of romance and emotions from there. It's a really hard-hitting book that talks about death, grieving, acceptance, and moving on. And it's one of the most underrated books that I've seen on Booktube. Nobody really talks about this book. I never hear anybody give it the hype that it deserves. But it made me cry. It made me have all the feels. The romance was very, like, just sweet and fuzzy, and I loved every second of it. I definitely recommend this book if you're looking for a good, hard-hitting contemporary romance, but just has a lot more of those hard-hitting life aspects to it because it was just done so beautifully. So definitely recommend that one. I love this book so much, and it holds a special place in my heart because of that. All right, the next one is a book that I read very, 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 very early on in the year. I believe I read it in January, and I really enjoyed this book, and I love this book so much. And the reason why I think it's so low on this list is because I did read it so long ago that I feel like I've separated myself from the feelings, but I know that I loved it so much, and I know that I still love it. I just think I need to do a reread, and that is 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott and Mickey Daughtry. I love this book so much. I know that this book is very hit or miss in the community. I know that I've heard that the representation for CF is not overly well done, which definitely changes my feelings about the book now. But reading the book and understanding my feelings towards it when I read it and how much it really broke me and took a piece of my heart with this book just doesn't change the fact that I love it so much. I wish the representation was done a little bit better, but I just unfortunately can't separate myself from my experience of reading it, and that is why it's in this list. I did really love this. This follows a story of two CF patients, which is cystic fibrosis, two CF patients who meet in the hospital during one of their extended stays, and they end up falling in love. But the problem with CF patients is they can't get more than 6 feet close to each other. They have to stay a 6 feet distance because CF is very contagious, and every strain of cystic fibrosis is different in each patient. So the likelihood of you contracting that person's form of cystic fibrosis only to make you more sick is very, very high. And so they fall in love, but they decide to take back 1 foot, and they are now 5 feet apart. And it's just a wonderful story about, death, morality, love, healing, hope, and essentially lost, and it's just so good. I love it so much. It holds a special place in my heart. I remember reading this book. This is the first book in a long time that has made me cry. I walked up to my husband in the kitchen, sobbing my eyes out. He thought something was wrong, and I didn't even finish the book yet. I think I still had like 3 chapters left, and I just lost everything. Like, I was just losing it. And then, because I apparently didn't cry enough, I immediately went and watched the movie and just sobbed until I couldn't sob anymore. So I love this book, holds a very special place in my heart, and I will definitely reread it in 2021. All right, up next in slot number 13, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This did sit in the slot of my best and favorite romance of the year until another book came along, and I'm sure you guys can guess what it is if you've watched my channel for long enough. But I did absolutely 100% love this book. I think that the beauty of this book is the fact that it not only takes hold of a really fantastic romance to watch unfold, but it also has some really hard-hitting topics and some topics that you wouldn't normally think go and work in a romance, but it really, really does, and it just brings the story to life so much more and gives it so much more depth, which I love about it. This follows 2 characters, January and Gus, and they are both writers, and they end up in the same small town in these summer beach houses for the summer, and they actually were in the past college rivals, and now they are both authors. Both of them are really suffering with writer's block, and through a growth in their relationship, they decide to switch genres. So January is going to write literary fiction, and Gus is going to write romance, and they make a deal based off of that. But during all of that, they end up creating this really awesome relationship, but both of them are dealing with some really intense baggage. Gus's baggage you don't find out until a little bit later in the book, so I won't spoil that for you. But January's father has just died, and she just finds out that he has this whole secret life that she never knew about. And she's really struggling with grief and death, but also coming to terms with the fact that you don't always know the people that you think that you know. And that was just a really awesome theme in this book, and there's also some talk about cults in here, and some just really weird things that you wouldn't think go in a romance book, but it's so much, it just works. It just works in this book, and I love it so much. I sobbed at the end. There is a really touching scene in here that just holds a special piece of my heart, and I love this book so much. 100% recommend it if you're looking for a really good romance read. Okay, up next is another book that I read pretty early on in the year, but I still love this book so much. The second book, unfortunately, wasn't my favorite, but this book definitely holds a special place in my heart. I think I'm gonna say that for all of these books, but they really, really do. And that is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. This is one of the only other books on my shelves that I have tabbed this much. I love this book. Ow, I just hit myself in the face with it. I love this book so much. I think that this is the first book that I read that was set historically, like in a real world setting, but historically, and I fell in love with the setting. Even though I'm not a huge person that loves historical settings, this worked for me. This follows a magician named Esta who has the ability to stop and pull time, but due to an artifact that is very well known in the world that they live in, she also has the ability to time travel. And so she is a really well-trained thief. She gets sent back by her teacher to go into the past to steal a really important artifact they were hoping will bring down the Brink. And the Brink is this magical force that strips Magi's of their power. In this book, I think they're called Magi's. I don't even remember anymore. It's been a long time. But it is just a really fantastic book full of twists, turns, deception, lies. The whole thing is just a big mindfuck once you get to the end. And I had such huge book hangover once I read this book. I literally immediately went and purchased the second book. I will say the second book wasn't my favorite. It didn't meet the expectations of the first book for me, but I still really love the series and cannot wait for the third one to come out in 2021. All right, number 11 is going to be Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I love this book so much. It is such a fantastic gay book that just warms my heart with like no end. I just loved it so much. This book is such a wonderful concept for a book that just played out so well, personally, in my personal opinion. This follows the first son, I think that's what they call him, the President of the United States' son, as well as the royal family's son. And it's a hate to love with a lot of politics mixed in, which I usually don't like in books, but I really loved it in this book. I think that it was balanced really well. But it's a hate to love where they end up having this huge publicity stunt in the beginning of the book, and they end up going on this PR tour to help boost their image as friends due to the alliance that they have with each other. And they find out that they didn't actually hate each other at all, that they actually really had some deep feelings for each other, and it just blooms and blossoms from there. This is a fantastic romance. The scenes are very steamy, and all of the stuff happens in this book, way more than I was expecting, but I enjoyed every second of it. This book made me laugh. This book made me cry. It just was everything that I could have wanted in a book and more. And I'm so glad that I read it. All right, in spot number 10, we have The Anti-Virginity Pact by Katie Wismer. Now, this book really broke me in one particular scene, and I still think about this scene to this day. I just remember sitting in my bed, closing the book after reading that scene and thinking, how do I pick this back up? Because it was just portrayed so well and so raw that it hurt. And I will let you guys know that particular scene has to do with an intense bullying scene. So if you are not comfortable reading about bullying, I really wouldn't recommend that particular scene. This book in general talks about some really hard topics in regards to religion, virginity, there's some animal abuse in this book, but it's all handled really well. There's also attempted sexual assault, so a lot of really hard topics that were talked about in here that I would definitely warn you before going in. But this book is so amazing. This author is fantastic. I've talked about her on my channel more times than I can count. She is a self-published author as well as a booktuber. I will leave her information in the description box below if you want to go check her out, but this book really was fantastic. I read an arc of this before I ever got the physical copy, and it was just such a joy to watch the story come together. I love the characters so much, and seeing the amount of hurt and pain that the author was able to put into this book, but also give it a well-rounded storyline that helped you really feel for the characters, made it so wonderful to read. And I will definitely reread this again. It was such a fantastic novel, and I cannot wait for anything more that she puts out. All right, up next we have one of my favorite series of all time, and I did pick this particular book in the series because this one is my favorite book in the series so far, and that is Hollowpox: The Hunt for Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is part of the Nevermore series, and I absolutely freaking love this series. Again, this is a series on my channel that I've talked about way more times than I can even count on my two hands, but that is because I adore it so much. This is a middle grade series that has to do with a girl named Morgan Crow who is destined to die on the eve of her 11th birthday. She is what is known in this world as a cursed child. However, on the eve of her 11th birthday, she ends up getting bid on by a man named Jupiter North and whisked away to this wonderful land called Nevermore, where she is put into the trials to become a part of the Wonder Society. And the story really evolves and it changes and shapes itself from there. But there are so many wonderful, wonderful things in this book. The characters are fantastic. The talking cat Fenestra is my favorite character in the entire series. She is just so snarky and so much attitude bundled up into one character, and I just can't help but love her. Some of the parts of this book has made me feel physically depressed for this character because she just goes through so much, and you can't help but want the best for her. But no matter what, I'm still rooting for her, cheering her on from the sidelines, and just wanting to know how the story ends every single time. Jessica Townsend kicks these books out of the park every time, and I just can't wait to read more. So I definitely recommend the series if you haven't already picked it up. If this is the push you need, you got it. All right, for the spot number 8, we are looking at Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. This book really just hit different. It just hit different. And this follows a trans character named Jam who ends up in an interesting situation with a painting that her mother drew that had to do with basically blood magic. She has evoked this monster that has now come into her world and is telling her that some people that she really cares about are in danger. And the only problem with that is the world that they live in is supposed to be eradicated of monsters. And apparently this monster that she pulled out of this painting is here to hunt down the monster that lives in their world. And so that's all I'm going to say about this. This book is really short and I don't want to spoil too much, but this book is so fantastic. It's a huge metaphor on life and what human beings are capable of, and it's just so amazing. This book made me cry and gave me so much emotions in just a short time frame here. So many amazing things were put into this book with so much power and punch that I just couldn't help but love it every second. The audiobook was amazing. The book was fantastic. I 100% recommend it. All right, spot number 7. There is no way that I couldn't add this book, or at least one of the books in the series, onto this list. I don't know, honestly, which book is my favorite, the first or the second, so I just went with the first one, and that is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I love this series so much. This series really changed my thoughts on a lot of things, and I love Marissa Meyer for it. I can't believe I love the series as much as I do. I cannot wait to read the third book. I am so excited. I'm supposed to be reading it in January, and you best believe I am counting down the days until I can pick that baby up because it has so much to give me, and I know it's going to be amazing. And this follows a world where superheroes are at the forefront, and they are called the Renegades, and the entire world depends on these Renegades to keep them safe, keep crimes at bay, and unfortunately, a lot of people depend on the Renegades a little bit too much. So this follows Nova, who has an interesting relationship with the Renegades because at her time of need, when she was young, the Renegades were supposed to come and save her, and they didn't. And so she is really hell-bent on vengeance to make up for their inability to protect her when she needed them most. And so what ends up happening is she becomes a spy and becomes a part of the Renegades, but is also working with the anarchists, who are the anti-heroes in this story. And it just is so much fun to watch the story play out because there are so many secrets that all of the characters are keeping, and you are watching this unfold and hoping that nobody gets caught, because even though Nova is a spy, you can't help but root for her. And even though the other characters have secrets, you can't hope for things to just work out for them, because you just know that you want the best for these characters, because they're just the best. They're the best, and I love them, and I need to know what happens. I need to know the ending. I cannot wait for the third book. I'm excited. I'm so excited that I'm losing my voice. All right, book number 6 is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. There was no way this wasn't going to end up on my favorites of the year. This book really changed me, honestly. I don't know how else I can say that, but it did. This really felt just so real, and that's because it is. I know you guys know what this is about. This follows Star, who witnesses her best friend get shot and killed by the police after getting pulled over for a traffic stop, and how the people around her react to such news, how the town and her neighborhood react to the news, and how things divulge from there. And it's really about racism and social justice and learning how to cope with death, especially like that. And it was so good. It just brings up so many fantastic topics about microaggressions and racism and what society is willing to accept. And it was so good. I loved it so much. I watched the movie and really enjoyed the movie as well. This book holds a really special place in my heart because it made me feel so understood in more ways than one, and I cannot thank Angie Thomas enough for that. So this book was fantastic. 100% recommend it if you haven't already read it, because it is so amazing. In spot number 5, we have another book that is my favorite memoir of the year, and probably will be my favorite memoir that I have read probably ever. This book was the first book that I've ever read that I have felt seen and heard and understood in more ways than I can even tell you. And that is We're Gonna Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. This memoir was fantastic. I listened to the audiobook and loved it so much. Gabrielle Union really talks about some hard topics in this book, including murder, gang violence, gang retaliation, a very detailed rape scene, and it just was amazing. Racism is talked about in this book really well, and she just really talks about living in a black neighborhood and not feeling black enough, but also living in a white neighborhood and not feeling white enough, not feeling like she fit in any one spot. And that's definitely how I felt growing up. I just never felt like I was good enough for either section of my life, and I just didn't know how to take myself outside of that box. And this book just really showed me and made me feel like I wasn't alone. And I have so much to thank for that. I remember reading this book and just really crying about some of the really hard-hitting topics, but also just things like that just made me feel like I was seen. And there's no other way I can explain that. I loved it so much. I think that this book is amazing, and I think that everyone should read it, but I think the love that I have for this book might just be because of personal preference, but I do still think that it's a fantastic memoir, that everyone should read it. I still think you can get a lot out of it. It was really amazing. All right, for my 4th spot for the picks this year, that is Slay by Brittany Morris. Again, this book made me feel seen. This book made me feel heard. This book made me feel like I could have a space of my own, like the main character created for the Black community. This follows a girl named Kira Johnson who has created this online gaming world created specifically for Black people to be able to be proud of who they are and relish in their culture without having to feel like they have to sugarcoat things or change things to fit societal norms. And it's just a place where they're not going to get judged. However, something happens to one of the people that plays this game in real life, and this game ends up getting thrust into the spotlight, and the questions of racism gets brought up about whether or not this game is not only exclusive, but also racist. And Kira has to really defend what she has created and also deal with her own things that are going on in her life in regards to racism and understanding and acceptance. So this book is so good, so amazing. The game actually, like the writing of the game in this book was told so well. It felt so real. And watching these characters kind of play out and figuring out where people stood and their thoughts on how things were divided was really awesome to see. So great job. Love this book. I will continue to read the author's work because it was really fantastic and 100% recommend it. All right, the next book in the third spot today is my most recent book that I have finished, and I loved it just as much as most people did, and I'm assuming it's going to be on a lot of favorites lists this year, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by B.E. Schwab. I loved this book so much, and I really took my time with it. I was really slow with reading it, and that may seem like, oh, you didn't love it, but I love this book so much because I took my time with it, because I let myself really seep up the story and enjoy every moment of it, and it was just such a beautiful work of art. Watching this book come together and seeing how all of the little things interconnected just made it so worth it. This follows a woman named Addie LaRue who makes a deal with essentially what could be called the devil, and she really wanted to live for herself and belong to no one, and so this god that she prayed to gave her exactly that, and she only lived for herself, meaning that every time that she met somebody, they would forget her, and she lived a life on her own by herself for 300 years, and you follow her story over 300 years of her loneliness, her solitude, her frustration of never being able to make a mark on the world. She can't paint, she can't draw, she can't write music, she can't break anything, she can't leave a mark in any way, shape, or form, and she is really struggling with that until she meets a man named Henry in a bookstore who knows who she is, who remembers her name, and it was so amazing. This book gave me all of the feels. I cried at the end. The reveal that you get at the end of this book made this book feel so complete and so real, and I have a newfound appreciation for the Owl Crate edition of this book for reasons that I will not divulge, but when you read the book, you will know, and it was just so amazing. The writing was beautiful, the storytelling was beautiful, the plot was amazing, the characters were awesome. Love this book, will definitely reread it. It was so great. All right, in spot number 2, this was a really hard choice. Between the top 3, this was really hard, but the warm, cuddly, everything I needed feelings that this book gave me beat out Addie LaRue just by a smidge in regards to the top 2 spot, and that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I love this book so much. This is a fantastic romance book that I recommend nonstop all the time at work because it is so good. This follows Chloe Brown, who deals with chronic pain, and one day she has a near-death experience, and she decides that she has lived a very boring life and has been very limited by her illness, and she really needs to get a life. And so she makes a list of things that she would like to do, and she enlists the help of her landlord, Red, who happen to have a slight hate-to-love relationship with each other, and it just ends up playing out to this wonderful, fantastic, amazing romance. Now, it was really hard for me not to put the second book in the Brown Sisters series on this list, which is Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which I also think is so amazing and so fantastic, but this one is just a smidge better, just a smidge, and that's the reason why it made it onto this list and the other one didn't, but best believe it's still high up there in my favorites. It was one of my contenders for the top 15, believe me. But this book is just so amazing. The relationship was so well done. The snarkiness, the characters, like, personalities just shone through in more ways than one, and you just couldn't help but love them, fall for their characters, root for their relationship, and hope that they made it out in the end. And it was just so good. There's also a cat in this book that's so cute. I love the relationship between the sisters, and it was the best romance book that I've read this year, hands down, by far. I loved it. All right, we're at the top spot, and I'm not even going to drag this on. You guys all know what my favorite book of the year was. I've talked about it so many times in my videos. I have a tattoo. I love it. It is the best book that I have read ever, and that is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, the first book in the Crescent City series. I can't even really articulate my love for this book at all, except to say that I loved it. I mean, I can articulate it, but it's just it's amazing. The book is huge, don't get me wrong. It's a big book. There's a lot of world building. The first 200 pages are really hard to get through. And I had read some, reviews and some comments saying the book was really long and long-winded and didn't feel like it needed to be that long, and the parts were boring, and they didn't like the murder mystery aspects of this, but I loved every second of this book. The relationship between Bryce and Hunt, the relationship between Bryce and Danica, the feelings that I got for all of the characters. I still, to this day, when I think about a certain scene, I want to sob because it broke me. And I know 100% for sure after reading that section of the book, the last little bit of the book, the last, I want to say 200 pages, took a piece of my heart with it. I will never be the same after reading this book. There's no way that I could ever read it again for the first time, and that saddens my soul because I want to experience it all again for the first time and really just take it all in because it changed me. It changed me. And I could talk about this book all day long. I could talk about this book until I'm blue in the face. And I just can't even explain to you why I love this book as much as I do. I just know that it changed my life forever, so much that I got it inked onto my skin. I have a huge moon tattoo on my arm, and the quote from the book, "Through love, all is possible." If you've read the book, you know how important that quote is, and it changed me. It changed me. I was watching people do some vlogs, reading vlogs on this book, and just watching them go through the motions of reading this made me want to pick it up all over again. I will 100% be rereading this in 2021, and I love this book so much. I thank Sarah J. Maas for changing my life and for giving me a book that really changed my life. So it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm sorry if you can hear the kid jumping up and down, but it's amazing, and I thought you should know about it. If you haven't already read it, please just pick it up. I hope that you won't be disappointed because I surely wasn't. But that is the end of my top 15 books that I read in 2020. I am so happy that I had such a fantastic reading year. There were so many books that were on my prelim list of books that were going to make it into the top 15. And it was such a fantastic reading year. I went from reading 0 books in 2019 to reading 100. And I think by the time this video will be coming out, I will have read over 190 books this year. That is insane. That is crazy. But I have loved every second of it. And I can't even explain the love that I have for Booktube, for reading, for you guys, my subscribers, the people that I have so much love and appreciation for. So thank you so much for all of you guys for sticking through my journey through 2020. And I hope that you guys had an amazing year just as I did in regards to reading. I know that 2020 wasn't the best year at all for a lot of reasons and for a lot of people, but I hope that at least reading was a shining light in your life this year, as it was in mine. So I would love to know down below which books are your favorite books of the year. Please let me know. I know that I've asked this of you guys many times in my videos, but I would love to hear some feedback now that we are at the very end and it's time to do some reflection. So let me know down below what your favorite book of 2020 was, or your top 5 or your top 10 or your top 15. Share it all with me. I would love to chat with you guys about it. And without any more babbling, that is the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.